In a previous screencast, we were in code.org, and I showed you their debugger. So we got to see the sequence of uh, we saw code run line by line, and it kind of jumped around the place, and then we saw the output after each line was executed. Now the drawback about CodePen is that it doesn't offer that kind of like stepping through running your program a line by line at a time. So later, when you become even more advanced programmers, you're going to have to like do that on your own. So I'm going to demonstrate that today to understand like this odd behavior. So I save. Let me run my pen. At the very beginning, the number is 6. That's the rule that makes sense. When the number is 6, I see a circle. When I press odd, it rolls it again because I pressed somewhere on the screen. And specifically this button, the odd button that I built yesterday, it goes over, is your random number odd? If so, it displays a rectangle. So this is the case where it gets weird. I click the screen, so a new random number was generated. I see the number 3, and if my odd function was sequenced correctly, right, if I clicked on this button, I should see a rectangle in the lower left-hand corner. But notice it comes one button press later. So I press it, and now even though the value is 6, which should display the circle on the right, that's great, I see my rectangle. Okay, this was the pattern, and let's go through why it is. So previously the value was 3, then it became 6. So Beano's dice value, when it's being drawn, the text is there, we can ignore that. We see the dice value, it's right here. So the last frame before this, so imagine it was one frame before, the random number value was 3. 3 was displayed on the screen. So Beano's dice value, I'll just make a temporary comment, Beano die value was 3, okay? As we go down, 3 mod 2, so think about the remainder when you divide 3 by 2. Is it equal to 0? No, it was equal to 1. So then we don't draw the circle, which we saw. We actually saw a blank screen, right? Then we go down here. We don't execute this part. And because we press the odd button, we check this one. Okay, we draw a background. There was your white screen. And then Beano's dice value was 3 mod 2. Is that equal to 1? Yes, we should have seen this rectangle, but it doesn't, right? But notice the order there. I was executing my code from the top going to the bottom. I walked through my draw function, then I walked through my check odd function. Now what actually happened was different. I'm pretty sure this part would have executed first, this check odd function. And why is that? Well, at the very beginning, notice we borrowed some code from the p5.element, its DOM library, whatever display something manager. This code actually, the mouse press, check odd happened first. So when it saw the rectangle, no, I made a mistake. So, oh shoot, yeah, I think I messed up on that. So, darn it. So check odd, that previous frame, this is so hard to show. So when the dice value was 3, your Beano's die value was okay. So oh gosh, and this is being recorded. Ugh. So Beano's die value at this point in time may not have been 3, and I don't think I can come up with a quick way to show you that. So instead, let me just give you my recommendation on how to avoid these tricky bugs, okay? These tricky side effects when we're thinking about these subtle differences of code. So notice down here, any function that I have that does drawing should be inside the draw function. When we separate those two behaviors, now we have, okay, something is out of place. When one part executes before the other, we have unintended side effects. So right here, instead of drawing a rectangle, my check odd function will only manipulate variables, okay? So here, to help us, instead of drawing a rectangle, check odd will just change the value of variables. So now when I say that, that means up here I'm going to need a new variable, a new variable to do just one specific job. This variable's job is to check, let's make it better. So odd or even. Okay. So initially it's going to be blank. And then down here, let's initialize it again to. So we have this variable odd or even. It switches between, at first it's going to be blank, but it's going to go between the words odd and even. So after we roll, right about here, notice our value, this thing, it checks to see if your value is even. So like before we draw, we're going to use that odd even value. When you divide it by 2, it equals 0, so that means the value is even. Now, when we go down here, instead of drawing a rectangle, we're going to set this new variable we made to being odd. And now, so do you understand the difference there? The variables help you keep track of your the current state of your program, like what values, like either numbers or words, and then you're going to do all the drawing like way at the very end. So right before this thing, if odd or even equals even, we're going to tell it to do something specific. What is it going to do? We had this line. If it was even, we draw an ellipse to the right-hand side of the screen. Else, if odd or even equals odd, and then we move this line from the rectangle into here. So a subtle resequencing, because our behavior is getting more complicated, let's enlist a variable to help us out. Odd or even is a variable that contains either like 3 words. At the beginning it's blank, but then it toggles between even and odd depending on dice rolls. So let's save and run, and let's see what happens. So at the very beginning, it starts out at 6. 6 is in fact even. It has no remainder when dividing it by 2, so we see the circle. We press the odd button. It's 2. It's 2 again. It's 5. Oh, darn it. Oh, let me delete this thing. So the one other change I made was since drawing the background is a specific function that relates to draw, it should be in the draw function. Previously I had inside check odd. I'm going to take that out. That no longer goes there. Any drawing remains in the draw function. If you keep that rule, we should not have these unintended side effects. So after fixing that, my random number is even. 4 divided by 2 is 0, so we see the circle. We click the screen. We still see the circle. We click the screen again. There's an odd number. Shoot. 6, 5, 1. Okay, it's still being displayed one screen before. So my last part is, where are you, mouse pressed? So notice right now there's kind of 2 conflicting behaviors. There's this mouse pressed function over here that's like clicking anywhere on the screen, the die gets re-rolled. And now there's specific like clicking behavior. Pressing this odd button yields something different. So why don't we move this to just go here. After you set your value, let's redraw. We no longer have this function here. Save and run. Now at the very beginning, notice that even though 3 was being generated, we didn't click the button to trigger that. So that check odd function did not run. Now when we click this, it's 4, so we do see something on the screen in the proper space. It's 2, we see the circle. It's 1, gosh darn it. Ah, blast, okay. It still displays 1 sequence later. Darn it. Okay, so it looks like I have to do some more work on this over the weekend to get you a more clear video. So I still have the same problem where it's 1 click behind. So notice when I rolled 3 and then I see a 6, I should have seen a ellipse there. When I see a 1, I should see a rectangle, but now it's like always 1 behind. Darn. Okay, well, I guess I'll pause it there.